Welcome all. Definitely cozy vibes as I film this because I'm sleep deprived. So yeah, as we get into April, there's a stellium in Aries, and so I'll talk about that. But particularly with Mercury there, I don't know about you, but I've been having more headaches, and I've also been just finding my mind a lot more restless, and that kind of goes hand in hand with this turn of the season. So it's not shocking, but there's a lot of fire, a lot of choleric energy, and sometimes it can be hard to rest when there's this much fire going on. We've got Jupiter, Sun in Aries, Chiron as well for most of the beginning of the month, and Mercury. Mercury actually leaves, I think, on like the 3rd. But yeah, so there's a lot of the fire element, particularly that like initiatory pulse of Aries that wants to just like break through and go for it. And I would say that if you happen to have strong placements, so strong personal placements like your sun, moon, ascendant in fire, this month is going to be very active for you, particularly because you're not only getting the boost of all the Jupiter boost in Aries and the sun being there as well, exalted, but since Pluto has entered Aquarius, there's a lot of transformation and potentially transformative breakthrough for those who have personal placements or maybe the nodes even in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. And I think it can be very enlivening, but it's important to rest. So I want to recap. Oh, before I talk about that, I want to recap what I talked about last month a little bit, Saturn in Pisces, as this is a newer um, transit that we're going to have for the next 3 years. And there's been a lot of news, even just in the past month, of of Saturn entering Pisces that really coincides with what this represents. So as I mentioned, and it might have been like 2 transit videos ago, Saturn in Pisces can be, of course, water contamination, as we saw with that Ohio spill. And even just recently, my hometown, Philadelphia, there was a latex finishing solution or something spilled into one of the rivers, and it's raised concerns about contamination, obviously. And so we're seeing a lot of these incidents, and we're also seeing unprecedented amounts of precipitation, particularly my friends who live in the Bay Area were getting tons and tons of rain. And that's not likely for that area, especially in recent years. But the positive of that is that they're no longer in a drought, which is actually pretty huge because it's been in a drought for a really long time. And I was just passing through there, and it's really green. The hills are super green, which is awesome to see. And so potentially a good thing with that symptom of Saturn in Pisces. But something that we need to be mindful of is that this placement, because Saturn is a malefic and does show repercussions, if you will, karma, we can see the challenging sides of that, like tsunamis and any peninsula or islands can be affected, as well as aquatic life deaths, sadly, unfortunately. Um, in South Florida, there's this algae bloom that they think they said it's like a 50-50 chance, but it might span like 5,000 miles in the sea. And this is the pictured here is that algae. I'm blanking on the name of it is. Sargassum. So apparently, it's like a really stinky, like it emits a very stinky raw egg odor, and it can be very harmful, not just to the sea creatures, right, that reside in the ocean, but even I think it can carry some little insects or stuff that can cause rashes on humans. And it's really interesting because I think of these kind of blooms and stuff of algae as like Mother Nature trying to come back into balance, right? Because usually they do. I'm not sure about this particular one, but I was in Tulum and I remember they rake up all this algae that comes on the beaches there, because they don't actually um, dispose of the waste in a proper way. They just pump it into the ocean, which is actually very disgusting, especially if you like to dig holes in the beach looking for stuff. Yeah, so the algae there actually is a side effect or symptom of all that waste that they're from hotels and stuff that they're just dumping into the ocean, which is really gnarly. But hopefully, it's like Mother Nature's way of perhaps bringing some sort of balance. This particular algae bloom, I don't know if it has a benefit like that, but it's something to just be mindful of during this period. And this period of Saturn and Pisces is a 3-year period. Historically, it also can bring about shipwrecks, which I found really interesting, and then also potential restrictions on drinking water, even the ocean itself, in terms of boundaries and who owns what, which can get really interesting. I've always been into seasteading, the idea that if you live on a boat at sea, you're not really part of any government or any domain, but potentially during this period, we might see uh, boundary lines drawn within the ocean. Who knows? All right, so back to that first slide. We have Mercury retrograde happening towards the end of the month, but a lot of my super nerdy astrology colleagues will consider pre-shadow to be like 2 weeks before the actual retrograde date, which is April 21st. So take that as you will, but know that it's retrograde into Taurus. And so obviously this can deal with the financial realms. And we're already seeing news, right, of banks closing, etc. And then the reassurance of, oh, it's fine though. You don't need to do anything to your money. Just keep it in the bank. Business as usual. But I would say that, yeah, if you're wanting to maybe reassess how you invest and what you invest in, it could be a good period to do that. I wouldn't during this retrograde particularly like do any speculative investing. It's probably not a good time for that. It's a good time to just chill and maybe just keep the money in the shoebox under the bed. No, just kidding. I'm actually not a financial advisor, but it's interesting because we might see another kind of wave of, especially because Uranus is in Taurus as well, um, some economic, twists and turns during that period. But yeah, generally retrogrades, they're not a time to forge ahead. So enjoy the beginning of this month doing that. And then you can look forward to kind of a rest towards the end of April in terms of making commitments or formal agreements or trying to set things in a forward motion. It's more time to do retrospective and reflective types of activities. They just tend to flow better during that time. So I'm going to go over the days of intensity for April. We have, what's the first one? April 3rd. So we got Mercury squaring Pluto in Aquarius. And we also on the 5th have the full moon in Libra squaring Mars, which could be potentially like headachy. Whenever there's full moons, right, there's surge of things, and particularly because this is on the Aries axis and squaring Mars, it could just be kind of like a burnout, headachy kind of vibe. On the 7th, we've got the Scorpio moon squaring Pluto. This is a moon in detriment, Scorpio moon squaring Pluto. So that's adding to the intensity. I would say that this could be a good, because it's a Scorpio moon day, and it's a waning moon, it could be a good time to sow some seeds for your garden. Days of intensity, I just want to I know it's in red and it looks scary. They are intense. If you think of the word intense, it's like intention. And tension, sometimes it's a good thing, right? We need tension for growth and we need tension for a catalyst, right? And that's very obvious to me when I do relationship synastry sessions with people. Often in very functioning or people where people are pretty satisfied, there is at least one or two like scary looking aspects of squares. But a lot of the time in a relationship context, that can add to attraction, right? Because it's like there's some tension there. So intensity, it's just a higher energy, let's say. But obviously, for certain activities, you don't want that. On April 9th, we've got the moon square Saturn. There's the sun and moon also in Aries, so there's a double fire energy, and with Jupiter and Sag, really like a triple fire energy. But yeah, moon square Saturn can feel blocks. Frustration could be on that day. On the 12th, we've got the moon opposite Mars. And that's just anytime Mars is malefically aspecting things like Mercury or the moon, I always just say, like, be more careful, be more mindful, slow down. On April 14th, we've got the moon conjunct Pluto, squaring Mercury and Uranus. I feel like that might be the most intense day of the month, honestly, because it's a moon Pluto day and it's also squaring Mercury and Uranus. So that could be some big event on the kind of world stage potentially because of Pluto involvement and the Uranus and Taurus activity. On April 19th, we've got the new moon solar eclipse in Taurus, and this is also squaring Pluto. So with eclipses, I'll kind of talk about that more in depth on the key dates for the month, but eclipses, as you probably know, you can watch my eclipse video on my channel with my friend Mario. They are portals and they usually reflex back to another eclipse, right? They come in pairs or sets. And solar eclipses, I think, are more felt in people's lives, more maybe obvious, right? Because it's the sun being blocked out. And, they have this ominous allure to them, but it's really important to note your chart, note the houses it's happening in. So this one's happening at 29 Aries, which is a critical degree. So that's adding to the intensity. And if you're curious about critical degrees, I actually have a video on that too. They're really interesting. They're fated points of the zodiac, and they're very karmic, you could say. I know that sounds kind of vague, but that's the best way to describe it. They're like lessons coming to fruition, you could say. And as I mentioned, there's like the fire signs are getting really amplified this month in terms of like transformation and breakthrough. And I think this eclipse kind of speaks to that as well. On the 27th, we've got the moon opposing Pluto. All right, what are the days of harmony? Let's get into the pleasantries. So these are good days of just like flow, relaxation. There's just more harmonious trine sextile aspects happening between the geometry of the planets. And on the 7th, we have Venus and Taurus sextiling Neptune and Pisces. I talk about Venus Neptune a lot. I like the energies together. It's very artistic. It's very dreamy and imaginative, let's say. And so that's why I put the little painter guy there working on his stuff. On the 11th, we've got the Sun conjunct Jupiter and Venus trining Pluto. This is a nice social energy with the Venus trine to Pluto. And then the Sun with Jupiter is really, really nice, especially because, as we who follow astrology know, that when the Sun is in Aries, it's like the it's not exalted per se, but it's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's the peak time to pick plants and stuff when the sun is in Aries, right? Because everything, it's like the vital force is at its fullest, right? You could say. And so, yeah, with this, I like the energy of the 11th for doing something, really anything, but I think with that kind of plutonic energy too, could involve groups. On the 23rd, we have Mercury and Taurus sextiling Mars and Cancer. Mercury and Taurus. I don't know. For some reason, this made me think of cookies like coming out of an oven. It's just like a very homey, cozy vibe that day. It's a really nice day for spending time with your family, like a family outing. This is like family going to the ice cream shop or something. I don't know. That's just what came through for that kind of aspect. It's very cozy, comforting energy. On the 25th, we have Leo moon trining Sun, Jupiter, and Chiron. So this is a very expressive. Sorry, I'm just trying to silence the background distractions. Throws me off my game, especially when I'm tired. Okay, so the 25th, we've got the Leo moon trining the sun, Jupiter, and Chiron. So there's a lot of fire energy. This can be a very active period, a good time to like perform or play a sport, get outside, move your body, do something energizing. And then on the 29th, we've got the Mars in Cancer, sextiling Uranus and Taurus. So, yeah, more like kind of nourishing, fertile energy, you could say. On the key dates for April, I kind of went over a lot of these things, but we've got the full moon on the 5th. It is a day of intensity because the full moon squaring Mars, as I mentioned. I also quickly want to mention, because of that like emphasis on Aries energy throughout the beginning half of the month, really, when we think of this in like a anatomical medical astrology context, with all that like kind of like potential, what's the word I'm looking for? Like revved up energy, um, in the mind, right? The head, that's what Aries rules. What does it reflex to? So the opposite is Libra, and that's the kidneys. So something to pay attention to is like your kidneys right now. Are you, and especially with the water pollution stuff, it makes me think of that as well. The kidneys are strained when we don't get enough sleep. They're also strained from using too many stimulants, right? Like coffee and uppers of any kind, caffeine, and even hot spicy foods could be considered that. So it could be a good time to just like chill in that department and do the things that nourish the kidneys, which is getting good clean water. It's also getting enough rest, making sure that you are moving your body, right? Like not sitting too much as well. And obviously, if you're having any imbalance there, it's going to manifest through like low back pain. And sometimes you can just like, I feel like you can just read it in the face, even just looking kind of stressed, etc. But yeah, I would say nourishing your body during this time could be really good. It's just bringing that balance to all that Aries energy. And I've been talking to a few friends who've been having trouble sleeping as well. And interestingly, this could be connected to like the energies right now of just as we're going into this month of April. But I also think it's because there's all this like geomagnetic energy happening too. I was just in New Zealand and I saw the Southern Lights, and those are obviously connected to increased solar flares. And there's been a lot of sightings of that. And so we can't discount that those things affect us as humans in ways that we probably don't really know or fully understand. On the 10th, we've got Venus entering into Gemini, and it's a much more kind of social and lively Venus. It's also kind of adding to that fire energy through a sextile. On the 19th, as I mentioned, we've got the new moon solar eclipse at 29 Aries. Locate that in your chart and see what houses fall on that axis, that Aries Libra axis, and also what planets. And that can give you an indicator of what area of life is wanting to kind of like wake you up to right now. On the 21st, we have the retrograde beginning in Taurus, Mercury retrograde. All right, I'm just trying to breeze through this. I wanted to keep this side up because it's still pertinent, how we have Pluto in Aquarius right now. And if you want to hear more about this, watch my last month transit video. But these are kind of the themes that Pluto and Aquarius can bring. and this is the period until early June. And then it'll retrograde back into Capricorn for a little bit, and it'll re-enter Aquarius in January of 2024. But it's just some stuff we've been seeing and what to expect in terms of the collective, technology, all that stuff. So if you enjoy these videos, I really appreciate it. If you like it, comment, share. Yes, they are a service that I offer freely, so I appreciate your support of my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a beautiful month.